Well, we'll kickstart this edition with some news just coming in at this point in time. This is Rahul Gandhi's big attack on Modi on data price as mobile data costs reduced to divert attention. Insta Meta selfies won't bring you money. Insta usage brings money to business honchos. Social media addiction to divert the attention from real issues. Is Gandhi taking a jibe at the Prime Minister there?
आपके प्रधानमंत्री यहां आए, नरेंद्र मोदी बिहार आए और उन्होंने आपसे क्या बोला? उन्होंने आपसे बोला कि बीजेपी की सरकार ने डेटा का दाम इतना कम कर दिया है कि आप रील बना सकते हो, आप रील बना सकते हो, आप इंस्टाग्राम पे फोटो देख सकते हो, आप फेसबुक पे जा सकते हो। भाई और बहनों, रील बनाने से, इंस्टाग्राम पे फोटो देखने से, सेल्फी लेने से आपके जेब में पैसा आता है क्या? भाई और बहनों, जब आप सेल्फी लेते हो, अपने दोस्त को भेजते हो, जब आप इंस्टाग्राम पे जाते हो, जब आप फेसबुक पे जाते हो, तो पैसा जियो का बनता है, बिहार की जनता का नहीं बनता है, अंबानी का पैसा बनता है। भाई और बहनों, नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने आपसे रोजगार की बात नहीं की, आपसे कहते हैं आपको हमने इंस्टाग्राम दिया, डेटा का दाम कम किया। अब सच्चाई सुनिए, ये इंस्टाग्राम जो है, ये रील्स जो हैं, ये फेसबुक जो है, ये आपके ध्यान को भटकाने का तरीका है, आपके ध्यान को इधर उधर ले जाने का तरीका है। ये सारे के सारे 21वीं सदी का नशा है, नया नशा है, ये 21वीं सदी का नशा है।
That's the Battle of Bihar heating up even further. We'll continue to get you more updates from the state of poll-bound Bihar and much more news. For the moment, I'm going straight across to my colleague Sakshi Batra from Business Today Television. She has, as always, all the updates of the markets. Over to you, Sakshi.
Hello and good afternoon and welcome to the Market Closing Show. This is our brand new collab show between Business Today and India Today Television. It's 3 p.m. We are here to get you all the market closing action. First up, let's take a look at what's hot in the corporate and the financial space. After 2 days of losses, markets recover from the day's lows. Sensex flat near ID 3,350. The Nifty is up by 20 points at 25,500. Metals lead the gains while PSU banks and financial stocks buzz after Finance Minister hints at possible PSU banks merger. Also, Nifty still 200 points lower this week. Auto industry logs its best ever festive season with retail sales jumping 40% on a year-on-year basis to nearly 40 lakh units in October. Festive demand, GST 2.0 rollout and rural recovery powered the surge, led by two-wheelers that are up 52% while passenger vehicle sales rose 11%. Eli Lilly's anti-obesity and diabetes drug Mounjaro surges. It is now India's #1 pharma brand by value in October. Mounjaro hits 100 crore rupees in monthly sales as it overtakes GSK's antibiotic Augmentin just 7 months after launch. The IPO action heats up on Dalal Street. Pine Labs 3,900 crore rupees IPO opens for subscription with a price band of 210 to 221 rupees per share and is subscribed about 12% so far on day one. Meanwhile, Gro's 6,600 crore rupees IPO still open on its final day is subscribed nearly 10 times. Supreme Court will hear the plea filed by the father of Air India AI-171 pilot Captain Sumit Sabharwal seeking an independent probe into the June 12 Ahmedabad crash. The bench noted the preliminary report does not blame the pilot. Let's straight away look at how the stock markets are trading at the last half an hour in trade. Well, we are better off than what we had started off the day with. We are at the near high point of the day. You can see 1/10% of a loss, but despite that, we have actually recovered from lows of nearly 25,320 and thereabouts. Right now at 25,479. What's pulled up in trade? It's the metal stocks that are shining bright, the top moving sector. Look at the banks, especially led by the PSU bank, that are also supporting the rally in trade. Also, financial services, autos have also driven the sentiment up. We're also looking at the mid and the small caps as the stocks have also recovered from the day's low. What continues to be under pressure? IT stocks, pharma stocks, FMCG, real estate, infrastructure stocks. These are the sectors that have actually continued to reel under some pressure. On the Nifty, what are the top gainers as we inch closer to the end of the session and this trading week? Shriram Finance, 3.5% up in trade. Top mover, Adani Enterprises, Bajaj Finance, Tata Steel, M&M as all the stocks that are up and about in trade. On the lower end, you have Bharti Airtel, Tata Consumer Products, Indigo, Apollo Hospitals, Tech Mahindra, about 2% lower each for all of these stocks in trade as of now. You're also looking at some PSU buzz among BPCL, NMDC, BHEL as all the stocks that are still continuing to be hovering higher in trade. So that's the opening action, but let's quickly look at welcoming our guest. Mr. Avinash Gorakshakar, market expert, is now joining in to share with us his opening comments on the markets and of course sharing with us an outlook going forward from here. Welcome to you, Avinash. Good to have you with us. Well, slowly and gradually inching up in trade. Any suggestion, any indication that we are slowly and gradually coming out of this lackluster week?
Yeah, I think good afternoon, Sakshi. I think typically, the market has seen a good bounce back from the morning session. Yesterday, I think the key reason for markets to open weak today morning was the sell-off in the US markets, largely on the AI stocks and the technology stocks. So I think markets have now bounced back, considering the fact that, I think in India there are very few companies which are in pure artificial intelligence kind of segment. And I think, the quarterly numbers which have come out, we have been pointing out on your shows regularly, that these have been much better than what the street expectations are. And hopefully, I think the primary market issue, pipeline gets a little, slower because, this month is also going to be a very hectic issue. So there's a lot of supply of new paper in the market, and that actually also is leading to a lot of pressure on the secondary market side. So I think the bounce back is very positive. I think it means that there's been a lot of value buying today, specifically in stocks like autos, auto components, capital goods. I think on the negative side, you've been seeing some pressure on the IT company side, largely because, there have been some concern that whether the US-India trade deal happens this month or next month. And mostly, most of these stocks were actually rated highly after the Q2 numbers. So I think nothing to worry fundamentally there. There's some sort of profit booking happening there. So I think net, you need to take a stock specific call. I think broadly the index is not going to see 26,000 immediately. I think you would see the market in a very small range. And considering the fact that now typically next week is also going to be a result heavy week, you would see more action, on a stock specific basis.
Okay, since you started talking about the IPO space, Avinash, have you been looking at any IPO closely? Have you looked at it as a positive opportunity, or do you think most IPOs are actually, as the buzz in the town is, coming at lofty valuations and one needs to give them time? We've seen Studs IPO make a, just about muted debut. Today, Pine Labs has just got off to a slow start in terms of subscription. Grow, in fact, has got a good demand there. We've also seen huge subscriptions for the recently closed Lenskart. Any IPO that comes to your mind that you would want to believe as an opportunity that you would like to track?
I think two IPOs that you mentioned, Sakshi. One is Grow and second is Pine Labs. See, Grow has been looking at the kind of response and the kind of opportunity in the online broking space. The management here clearly does not want to remain only a broker. They want to get into wealth management and entire, track the financial services space. So this will be an interesting bet. And I think, despite the fact that capital markets are down, I think they've done something as good or much better than Zerodha, which is not listed. So I think
Okay.
this could be an encouraging kind of, company to watch out post listing. And of course, Fine Labs, which is into the POS category. I think this is also a fintech company, and I think looking at the kind of opportunity in fintech,
Hmm.
Fine Labs is also something we can look, from a longer term perspective. So I think, we have been telling our clients to look at these two companies. I think as far as Lenskart is concerned, we would expect the same lukewarm listing, for this company. But thereafter, I think we'll have to see how the company performs on the numbers, because typically the management commentary, the financials, I think these will be things which will be very actively tracked for Lenskart.
Absolutely. Let's now shift focus to the pharma space. There's enough and more buzz there, especially in India's weight loss drug market, which is heating up and heating up fast. Eli Lilly's blockbuster therapy, Mounjaro, has now surged to #1 spot, clocking 100 crore rupees in October in sales. Also, over 333 crores as far as since debut in March is concerned. The demand for metabolic and diabetes treatment is also rising sharply, and competition is now intensifying with Novo Nordisk's Ozempic getting approval and Wegovy already in the market as well. To break down what's driving this rapid uptake and the big pharma battle shaping up, let's actually go across to my colleague Neetu Chandra. Neetu, what's driving the sharp rally within just 7 months of the launch for Eli Lilly?
So yes, actually, Eli Lilly's Mounjaro has emerged as the top-selling brand in the Indian pharmaceutical market, and this has clocked nearly 100 crore in sales in October alone. So since its launch in the March 2025, the brand has already crossed rupees 333 crore in cumulative revenue, which is extraordinary for such a short span. So the growth has been driven primarily by rapid adoption in diabetes and obesity management, areas where Indian specialists are increasingly shifting to newer generation drugs like GLP-1 and dual GLP and GIP agonists, which Eli Lilly's Mounjaro is. These drugs don't just control blood sugar, but they also address weight reduction, making them highly attractive to both physicians and patients. So, additionally, if you look at the pricing, the premium pricing and the early acceptance in metros has, actually fueled its strong value growth, even with limited volumes. So, Mounjaro's success also shows that there's a changing trend in the Indian market where innovative, science-driven therapies are breaking through in which once generics-dominated space it used to be, Sakshi.
Right, so Neetu, while Mounjaro leads the charts, Novo Nordisk's obesity therapy Wegovy is also gaining visibility globally. What's the outlook for the space in India, and can Wegovy really challenge Mounjaro's momentum?
Yeah, now that's the key question. While the pharma track data confirms Mounjaro's dominance in India, the next competitive phase will be defined by Novo Nordisk Wegovy, which is semaglutide, which has reshaped obesity care worldwide. So Wegovy targets the same patient group as Mounjaro, those struggling with diabetes and obesity, but with a different molecular pathway and strong global outcomes data, it is backed by a better data. But in India, Wegovy's entry has been slower, mainly due to supply constraints and its import-linked pricing. But awareness among specialists and urban consumers is growing rapidly. It's very fast. And as access expands, it could open up a new therapeutic category in the country where like obesity treatment beyond diabetes.
Absolutely.
So, however, Eli Lilly has the early mover advantage with Mounjaro, a brand that already commands trust against among the endocrinologists. But if Wegovy enters in larger volumes and price points are rationalized, we could see both the brands driving double-digit growth in the anti-diabetic and metabolic disorder segment. So this is one of the fastest growing therapy areas in Indian pharmaceutical market today, and that becomes very important for the obese population, which is increasing in a country like India. That is there, Sakshi.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for that, Neetu. On that front, we will continue to watch out for how the competition is intensifying there. Remember, viewers, we are also going to be focusing on the earnings front as far as pharma companies are concerned. Pharma company Lupin has reported stellar performance this quarter. The company's net profit has jumped 73% year on year to now 1,478 crore rupees. This is largely driven by the strong growth in US market and higher sales in complex respiratory products as well. Revenues have also jumped by 24%. Reflecting steady traction across geographies. In fact, the management now remains optimistic about the coming quarters, backed by its robust product pipeline and focus on high-value therapies as well. Earlier, Neetu Chandra also spoke to Ramesh S., Executive Director and Global CFO, on the outlook for FY26. Let's listen into what he had to say.
When you speak about the US business, what has changed for Lupin in this particular market? Because numbers are showing really great.
No, I think it's just a progression of the last several quarters, so to speak. We have been the last several quarters we've been focusing on delivering on the respiratory portfolio and pretty complex products. So essentially we began with Albuterol, then followed up with Spiriva. We also had the last few quarters, in fact, products like Mirabegron, and this particular quarter ramping up of Tolvaptan. So it's clearly because of our focus on, in fact, delivering big hitters which bring in value. That's actually contributed tremendously to the ramp up of the sales in America.
So when we look at the India market, there's been a modest growth. So what is holding back the domestic business, and what's your strategy to revive momentum in this particular market?
I wouldn't call it actually modest growth, because I think it's about the industry figure, so to speak. The industry is about 7.2 odd, and we have been doing about 8.8. So clearly, it's much about the industry. It's on the back of, in fact, a five-pronged strategy, if I may. The first is, of course, more feet on the ground, accompanied by, in fact, productivity gains as well. Second is having, in fact, a robust portfolio of products, part of it which is in license, but a chunk which is actually brought in from our own stable. Case in point is, in fact, the triple drug combination that we brought in a LABA-LAMA ICDS combination. The fourth is looking at judicious, M&As from time to time. So all of this have contributed, and of course, accompanied by sophistication in terms of a technology pack. So it's clearly, a patient-centric approach that we have followed in India, which has actually helped in growing the business over the last several years. And clearly, that's going to be the focus for the years to come as well.
I would like to ask you, what is the outlook of the company in the next quarters and coming years? And are you also looking for expansion in portfolio?
Clearly, we are pretty bullish about the future with the kind of products that you're building up. The focus on, delivering value through respiratory portfolio, complex injectables, the biosimilars, and the like, apart from specialty. I'm not sure what you mean by saying diversifying our therapy focus. Clearly, specialty is of interest to us, but so we just got into ophthalmology through a buy in Europe, and clearly we would be looking at supplementing that through further acquisitions.
All right, let's go across to our guest now, Avinash, who's with us. Avinash, how have you assessed the entire pharma story thus far? On the one hand, the earnings are coming in for some of these large cap companies. How are they panning out? Of course, apart from this, the entire buzz around growing sales of the anti-obesity drugs, keeping all these foreign-owned companies in the limelight. There are so many Indian-owned companies that are dealing with distribution as far as these anti-obesity drugs as well are concerned. So are they also reaping the benefits there? How are you looking at the entire sector?
I think, Sakshi, if you look at the numbers from Lupin, I think one major trigger point has been the strong growth in the US market and other emerging markets. And I think, if you look at the EBITDA margins and the kind of commentary given by the Lupin management, it very clearly indicates that the second half is equally going to be better or significantly, stronger in terms of both top line as well as profits. And I think this is definitely a good sign, because after a very long period, pharma companies operate in a very strict regulatory environment. So this is definitely a good sign. Other companies which should do well are typically companies like Sun Pharma or typically even Dr. Reddy's, because our sense is that the US market now presents a big opportunity, and despite the tariff threat, fortunately, this sector has not been touched by the US government. But my sense is typically, the US market is slowly recovering. It is giving chances to most of the Indian well-established pharma companies to scale up their operations. So I think for investors, one should definitely use this opportunity to accumulate, these kind of large cap companies. Our sense is that you will probably see a very strong FY26 via the second half number. And 27 should also be good because several companies are now in the process of launching new drugs and molecules, and which I think should obviously materialize in the coming 12 to 15 months. So I think net structurally we are very positive here.
Okay, got that. So from the pharma story, we are actually moving forward and trying to understand what's happening on the aviation space. Remember, this morning we started to tell you in our breaking coverage that chaos is continuing at Delhi's Indira Gandhi International Airport after major technical snag crippled ATC, that's the air traffic control system, disrupting flight operations and impacting over 300 flights now. With the system down, controllers have now switched to manual processing of flight plans, leading to widespread delays and congestion as well. In fact, airlines have now reported multiple flight disruptions with passengers facing long waits both inside terminals and on grounded aircraft as well. The Delhi Airport Management, in coordination with the Airport Authority of India and DIAL, has indicated that technical teams are working round the clock to restore normal operations at the earliest. For more on this, we are now joined by my colleague Karishma Sudani, who tracks this very, very closely. Karishma, what's the update now? We're given to understand delays across 300 flights, etc. Now, what is the time duration? It was 53 minutes when we had checked in the morning with you. What is the situation on ground as of now?
So actually, if we go by data from Flight Radar, then it's a 55-minute departure delay and a 40-minute arrival delay that we are currently looking at. More than 300 flights have been impacted since morning, and this has caused a lot of chaos when it comes to on-ground handling, because it's actually, if we look at this, if there are delays in departure, which means that most of the parking slots, which actually have a prescribed time limit, are occupied by these delays, and that does not let the arrivals also happen on time and the further flights to take on time. So a lot of airlines are planning to cancel their evening flights post 6 p.m. and passengers have also been instructed to recheck, and if it is not an urgent travel, then they've been asked to reschedule their tickets, especially with the elderly passengers and families with infants. Now, technically what has gone wrong is that there has been an error with the automatic message switching system, which is ideally responsible for all the weather report data and informing, maintaining communication between the ATCs and informing them on the departure and arrival plan.
Okay, thanks a lot, Karishma, for all that. Keep an eye out on all those developments. Important coverage for all those consumers who've been planning to fly in and out of Delhi. This is in news that is clearly impacting you, but we hope that normalcy returns to the ATC in terms of operations as well. Let's go back to Avinash. Avinash, what else is really ticking positively in the markets? Where do you think your focus is? We are already seeing a slight attempt from the markets to go back above 25,500. Volatility is still there, but what is keeping you busy in terms of opportunities and scouting for them?
I think within the opportunities, bracket, I think banks are looking interesting. I think public sector banks still continue to be very attractive if one looks at the kind of credit growth which is going to happen in the third and the fourth quarter. I think GST number for October was a pleasant surprise despite the cuts in GST. But I think overall the PSU banks are now all ready to disburse credit, and I think you'll see a big bump up in the numbers for most of the public sector banks, specifically the larger banks like Bank of Baroda, Canara Bank, SBI. Numbers have been very reassuring, and I think the second half is typically a busy season period for the banks. So I think you could expect a good amount of traction in the third quarter as well as the fourth quarter. And of course, other specific segments like the hospital stocks, hospitality stocks, these are sectors where I think you're going to see a secular growth story. Although Indian hotels, reported a slightly disappointing performance, the commentary for the second half has been very solid. They expect a very strong traction in the second half. So I think hospitality and hospitals, Apollo Hospitals reported a very strong number, and I think you could see the performance getting repeated or getting better in the second half. So I think, investors should use such opportunities when the market corrects for whatever reason to accumulate these stocks either in lump sum or SIP, because our sense is that FY27 now looks a little stronger, and once you get the December quarter numbers, you'll probably see that I think the confidence in the markets will come back, and surely I think if not immediately, but at least in the medium term, 26,000 looks very much possible. Maybe it will take some time, but looks very much possible.
Okay. I wanted to also ask you on the mid and the small cap spaces that are still continuing to be a lot more volatile than the large cap story at this point in time. How are you advising clients on their approach towards the mid and the small cap, since a large part of retail investors' portfolios are filled with a lot of mid and small cap names, and even their exposure towards mutual funds is also largely driven by these two sectors, but they have largely underperformed the large caps. Is there any sign of their turning red or turning green?
No, I think, probably you'll see this happening from the because typically within the small cap and the mid cap space, I think we have seen some recovery happening compared to the quarter one.
Yeah.
And I think you're right in saying most of the retail investors either have invested in mutual funds which represent the small cap and the mid cap kind of category of stocks. And these stocks typically take some time. Initially the large caps start moving, and once large caps get value,
Right.
and the market at the second best watching the mid cap and the small cap space. So I think definitely one worthwhile accumulating now, but for the longer term.
Absolutely, Avinash. Thank you so much for being with us on the program today and for sharing all those wonderful insights that you always do with all our viewers. With that, viewers, it's a wrap on the Business Today show. But don't forget to catch up Monday morning opening action with Abba Bakaya at 9 a.m. for Business Today show.